So it's kind of a loaded statement, and we can get into this as deep as you want to, but so there's a thing called proprioception, and that the brain kind of is connected to muscles, and there's communication going on between the muscles and the brain. You can kind of akin it to like a telephone line. Now, I live in Costa Rica, and as you drive down the highway, sometimes you see these telephone lines. They don't look in very good condition because of the elements, lots of rain,
Mm.
sun, monkeys chewing on them. So the telephone company has to come and replace them. And one of the things, so in our own bodies, what starts to damage that telephone line, and of course we're talking about the nervous system right now, it's the nervous system. What starts to damage the nervous system is stress, trauma, and overuse. So if you keep doing a certain movement over and over and over, that overuse is eventually going to probably create stress, which will then traumatize that joint. And we see that a lot, in the fitness world, people that are, gymnasts, people that type at a computer all the time, they develop carpal tunnel syndrome. And so what stretching does is it adds to the stress. It is a passive, or it is a stress that is placed on the body that starts to disrupt that communication system between the brain and the muscle. And so what happens is, like, if you test somebody's muscle, for example, the glutes, we were talking about the glutes earlier,
Mm-hmm.
and if I get my glutes strong, and I can test them and that they're strong. So in my lane or field of work, one of the things that we learn how to do is test force outputs of muscles. And when we say that, what we're really saying is that the muscle has an ability to contract and contract on demand, which is what a muscle should do. So
Mm.
if you bend over and pick up a pair of drop keys, that all the muscles in your abdominal area, let's just use that word for now, abdominal area, are shortening properly to stabilize the trunk and spine. If they're not working, if they're not shortening properly, then what's going to stabilize the body is the lower back. So coming back to the glutes, if I test my glutes, they're strong. I go and do a pose like pigeon pose, a very popular, famous yoga pose in the yoga world. And I go and then I test the glutes right afterwards. There's nothing. And so what happens is when we start to stretch a muscle, we start to pull a muscle longer than what it's capable of doing in a natural state. if we so in that natural state, there's communication between the brain and the muscle. If we start to pull it longer than what it's supposed to be, the brain no longer knows where that muscle is. The proprioception is cut off. And I always tell people, if you want to stretch because you think it makes you feel great, awesome. But just know that you're basically taking a pair of gardening shears to the telephone line between your brain and the muscle because you've got nothing after. And people are like, well, I don't believe you. Well, all you have to do is open your eyes in any yoga class. Watch people come out of poses like pigeon pose. They kind of like they literally limp out of it because there's no connection to any muscle. So they're kind of like, basically kind of pushing themselves up and then collapsing on their back, because usually yoga teachers will do it before Shavasana. Good place to do it because they have nothing after
Mm.
that. So it's kind of like you basically cut off that proprioception between the brain and the muscle, and the muscle loses its ability to contract and contract on demand. And that you no longer have stability. You may have flexibility, but you no longer have stability in the joints.